Hello Horror Hounds, we are continuing our trawl through some of the Italian zombie movies of the 70s and 80s, and we are settling today on a 1974 Spanish-Italian co-production that has been released with more than 15 titles to its name. Some know it as Let Sleeping Corpses Lie, some know it as Don't Open the Window. Here in the UK, we know it as The Living Dead at the Manchester Morgue. The film focuses on two protagonists, George and Edna. They have a cute meet on the road and end up sharing a car together. They get caught up in zombie shenanigans in the English countryside and are harassed by a local police inspector who thinks they're guilty of the murders committed by the zombies, who have been brought to life by a farming tool designed to kill insects using ultrasonic radiation. So in with the mix of the dead returning to life, you have themes of youth versus authority, as well as a less than subtle eco message. In these ways, along with the look of the zombies, director Jorge Grau is picking up George Romero's baton from Night of the Living Dead and running with it. But being pre-Dawn of the Dead, the rules of the zombie movies, as we understand them, as Romero cemented them, don't exist. How zombies operate and how they're dispatched is up for grabs. Anyway, there's no reason for one director to follow another's lead. We don't get all bunched up when werewolf or vampire films have different rules to one another. So stop trying to box the zombies in, man. They just want to be free to do what they want to do. They want to get loaded and have a good time and eat people. I like to think of The Living Dead at the Manchester Morgue as one of these stepping stone movies. It offers a nice blend of the controlled suspense of Romero's Night of the Living Dead and the extreme gore of Lucio Fulci's Zombie Flesh Eaters. It combines the dark gothic locations of British horror with a less inhibited European approach to horror, although Grau does make you wait for the gore and action. And as an aside, it also carries on the grand tradition of many Italian horror movies of the 70s and 80s by featuring a rather attractive redhead in the lead, this time Christine Galbo as Edna. If you're looking for a wham bam thank you ma'am zombie movie, this is not the film for you. However, if you're looking for a film that relies on atmosphere, building up the characters, adding to the tension and suspense over a sustained and prolonged period of time, you could do a lot worse than The Living Dead at the Manchester Morgue. It's 50 minutes in when the first big group zombie attack happens in the cemetery. It's a wonderful piece of sustained suspense. In fact, in all the attacks, the music drops out and the action is only accompanied by the stertorous breathing of the living dead. I'll be honest, that slowly escalating attack really worked on this hoary old horror dog. You know how it is, you watch so many horror movies that nothing really gets under your skin. The cemetery attack though, and the way it slowly escalates, seems to me to perfectly encapsulate the horror of the living dead. Through their relentless and dogged nature, in a situation that looks survivable, we see that it can quickly descend into a mad scramble for survival. The music in The Living Dead at the Manchester Morgue is top draw. In fact, the use of sound in its totality, in the broadest sense, is excellent. Grau wanted to give the film its own sonic landscape. This is significant because the cause of the zombies rising is through sound or ultrasonic radiation. He wanted the sound of the dead to permeate the atmosphere of the film, and he has told the story of watching his father dying and hearing his father's last breath. That tortured breathing of the zombies and the low-level electronic pulsing of the score work absolute wonders when married to the dour, foggy English countryside in raising the tension. After watching a lot of cheap knockoff zombie movies, it was really nice to feel comfortable in the hands of someone who clearly has an excellent technical and storytelling ability. one of the opening shots of the movie, a lingering shot on an abstract painting in George's antique shop during the opening credits, lets you know straight away that there's a brain at work behind the camera. The painting acts like one of those Rorschach psychological ink blot tests, and you start to ask yourself what you see in it. Is it a sunset? Is it a distorted face? If you sprinkle in a few vignettes and add a larger scale ending to the story, you've got yourself something that feels very like an early James Herbert novel, and I say that as a sign of quality. I did wonder whilst I was watching it whether or not the version I was looking at had been cut or not, and I've taken this from Wikipedia. Whilst there are claims that a scene in which a zombie eats an eyeball was filmed, no such scene exists in any surviving print of the film. Certainly there is a scene in which a character is eaten, and the female zombie does reach down towards the eyeball of the corpse, but before anything happens, a seemingly sloppy edit cuts to a long shot of all the zombies around the corpse continuing to eat. And you do, with the way the hand's travelling, the next thing you expect is for her to pull an eyeball out and munch on it. It just doesn't happen. There is another sloppy edit later on in the film where a group of zombies attack and disembowel a receptionist at the hospital. There's no shortage of gore included, but at the end of the scene, the camera does start panning down from the standing zombies, clearly travelling to lay on the receptionist, prone and dead in her chair, but we cut away before we get a look at her. It's a jarring cut that instantly makes you assume that the sight of her body has been censored from the film, except you clearly see her body in that position in all its gory glory a few minutes later when George arrives at the hospital and finds her. So again, I can only presume it's a sloppy edit rather than a shot that's been cut, because if you were going to cut one shot of her disemboweled on the chair, why would you include the same shot or the same sight only a couple of minutes later? The violence may be too long in coming and used too sparingly for some gorehounds out there. This wasn't a problem for me. Grau is clearly telling a story that he wants to, in the way he wants, and at the pace he wants. There's plenty of violence and gore, but it's used as punctuation rather than the punchline, rather than the purpose. And to my mind, it's all the more effective because of it. This is one to watch, absolutely.